Hello, people of the internet. This is Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir, and this is our review for the Happytime Murders, a 2018 American black comedy crime film from the house of Jim Henson. So, you love the Muppets? Well, what if they could curse and murder and have sex in an R-rated comedy movie? Well, to help me out review this interesting piece of media, I brought along someone who is quite well known on this channel, especially when it comes to film noir-esque films and forms of storytelling. Give it up for kaiju novelist Matt Denian.
Thank you, Andres, and thank you, everybody, for having me back again. I really do appreciate it. I know I was counting the other day, Andres. Yeah. I think this marks the 25th time I've been on your show, actually.
you probably, at this point, you may have been be on there for being the most recurring guest on this channel.
Sweet! What prize do I get?
You get the honor of doing another video with me.
Oh, dude, who could ask for anything more?
Exactly.
But thank you. I hope the fans aren't getting sick of hearing me. So if you guys are, please don't let me know and screw you.
That's the snarky R-rated spirit.
That's right. I had to bring it for this movie.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we're doing this.
You may not know, but currently, we are so committed to reviewing the Happytime Murders that we ourselves are actually being portrayed by puppets. You just can't see it right now. So creating these puppets was a huge waste of time and money.
It really was. I mean, just getting the nose on my puppet, it extends all the way across the room, so. And Andre's puppet is just gigantic head. It's just a huge, like, hydrocephalic. It's ridiculous. But we're enjoying having fun with our puppets, right, Andres?
Absolutely, because there's nothing more pleasurable than being able to play with yourself.
Damn right.
Smackity-doo. And that's the kind of lowbrow humor we'll be talking about today with the Happytime Murders. Now, this was...
Yeah, just real quick, promise me you won't rice peel off your own puppet, okay? Before you get to that part.
Right. I won't make any promises. I can't. I'm not contractually obligated to. So, the Happytime Murders was this film project that was first announced in 2008 by the Jim Henson Company, specifically by Brian Henson, the son of Jim Henson. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, Jim Henson is kind of like the guy who created, the stuff like The Muppets, Fraggle Rock, of course, Sesame Street, right. And, kind of inspired a whole new generation of puppeteering. And is probably one of the biggest names in the puppet industry.
Oh, he's like the name, right? In the puppet industry.
Yeah. I mean, I can only think of Rick Baker, but he's more like a costume guy. What about the other guy? Stan Winston. Stan Winston is more like the animatronic, but he also does puppets.
Jeff Dunham. Jeff Dunham, yeah. I don't know. Who else is there? I don't know if he makes those puppets or not, but, he does puppets.
Yeah. Si, senor. He does the puppets well. So anyways, he is the name in the puppet entertainment industry, especially with children's entertainment. But here came Brian Henson with this idea of creating a sort of a parody of film noir movies where it focuses on a gritty world where humans and puppets coexist, but there's some racial tensions between the two the races, I guess. And of course there was there's a string of puppet murders, and there's one puppet by the name of Phil Phillips who is on the case to find out who is murdering these puppets. And for the longest time, this film has been going through development hell for about 10 years now, until it eventually came out when it was finally it got off the ground in May 2017, when it was revealed that Melissa McCarthy had signed on to star in the film. Which was, I think, very different, because I'm not sure who they get. I guess according to Wikipedia, they approached many actors at the time throughout the years, like Cameron Diaz or Katherine Heigl. But I suppose as soon as they got Melissa McCarthy, then the production started to pick up speed. But for the longest time, all we ever had were two pieces of concept art. One of Phil Phillips, the grizzled central puppet character of the film, and the other being this murder scene where you see a dead puppet body and there's cotton everywhere. So it's a strange a fusion of comedy, satire, and grisly violence there. So it's like there's a good juxtaposition with that piece of concept art. And I was always very interested in it because, for me, I'm someone who grew up with the Muppets and Sesame Street, not so much Fraggle Rock, but I was aware of it.
Right.
So being able to take something from that I'm already connected with from my childhood and putting like a noirish spin on things like sounded perfect to me. This sounded like this could be like this generation's Roger Rabbit. Take something from our childhood and put like a seedy spin on things, because that is something we definitely like to. We are in our sick human minds. That's sort of the thing we do a lot in entertainment, where we take things that we thought were previously innocent and then try to dirty it up. Like, you see stuff like Robot Chicken or Family Guy.
Right, Family Guy, right, yes.
Where they do parodies, where they just do dark takes on stuff from that was seemingly innocent from our childhoods. Whether it's like Cookie Monster having a cookie addiction, like a drug addiction with cookies, or let's say you have Optimus Prime dying of prostate cancer on Robot Chicken. And even the idea of like, dirty versions of the Muppets has been something that we've actually seen multiple times before, surprisingly enough.
Right, and I would say that the Muppets themselves always kind of push the envelope a little bit, where like when you're watching it as a kid, you just kind of think like, oh, these are fun puppets. But if you go back as an adult and watch them, there's kind of like a lot of nods and wink type humor to sexual situations, or, they certainly do a little more over the top violence than you get on Sesame Street, stuff like that.
Yeah, and especially when they brought the Muppets back for like a season or two on ABC, they definitely pushed the envelope even further. Like there was a moment where Fozzie Bear talked about trying to going on a dating online dating site, and when he mentioned that he described himself as a bear, it brought what he said was like the wrong kind of attention.
Right.
So so speaking of like dirty puppets, we've had the most popular example would probably be Meet the Feebles, which was Peter Jackson's like raunchy take on the Muppets, where it's like, let's have us look at the seedy underbelly of the entertainment industry through this like little comedy show called Meet the Feebles and see how fucked up each of these like performers actually are. We've had what was it? Are you familiar with Avenue Q?
No, I'm not, unfortunately, so please.
Okay, so this was like a play where that kind of satirizes the lessons taught by Sesame Street, where in Sesame Street it kind of gives a very hopeful, very optimistic look at life and how when you grow up you can be anything you want to, and Avenue Q is kind of like that in the style of Sesame Street, except the main characters are like people in their like 20s going out into the real world and learning that it's nothing like how it's supposed to teach you. So the songs that kind of like touch upon like very real world stuff. Like there's one song called, what was it called? Like The Internet is Made for Porn. There's another song called like Everybody's a Little Bit Racist.
I feel like I've heard those songs before, actually, so maybe I've come across them at some point.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not really raunchy, it's just more like, hey, here's like again, kind of like a subversion, where it's like replacing the more innocent lessons of Sesame Street and replacing with more like, I guess more adult themes. And from what I've learned from other reviewers, there's apparently a Muppet porno called Let My Puppets Come. So so it's like the idea of dirty puppets has been something that has been done before, but this is probably the first time in a while that it's happened.
Right. And I was thinking, as far as like a noir spin, the only like semi-noir puppet thing I can remember, aside from like skits on the Muppets or whatever, was the kind of a cool episode of the Angel TV series where Angel was turned into a puppet for a while, and he like had kind of a noir vibe to his show.
Yeah. Oh, do you remember the Great Muppet Caper?
Yeah, I do. Of course, it's a great one.
I guess that was more like a somewhat James Bond-ish like crime caper thriller sort of stuff. I'm not sure if you can call it noir. Not really, I suppose, but there are themes of like, trying to solve a mystery.
Right. I was thinking it's kind of more like a heist film, maybe like an Ocean's 11 or along those lines.
Yeah, or I guess an anti-heist in this case.
Right, of course, because it's the Muppets, so.
Right. So looking at this film, it focuses on the main puppet, Phil Phillips, and this is a world where humans and Muppets coexist, but humans are very hostile towards puppets. And
Right, like
yeah.
as in, like, openly so. In fact, one of the first scenes we get is like a puppet's trying to get a taxi, and a human literally pushes him out of the way and says, like, "Stupid puppet," and just jumps in front of him.
Right. I'll probably get into this a little bit later, but I feel like this is like, it tries to do the whole Roger Rabbit thing where it's like it wants to have something to say about racism, but it really doesn't. It's just kind of there as like, as a way of telling some cheap or lazy, been there, done that puppet jokes before, racist jokes before. So
Yeah, you're right.
yeah, it doesn't really have anything to say about racism, and in fact, this is just like that over-the-top, like what I like to call Hollywood racism, where it's like, it's so exaggerated, where it's like, man, fuck these puppets, they're stupid and stuff, it's like, oh, you can't trust a dirty puppet. It's like kind of this sort of silly dialogue that's not so realistic, or at least I would say it had things not gone the way they have been in America recently with certain groups. So maybe that sort of over-the-top racism does exist, but usually I like to think not so much.
Right.
I feel like if I say anything more about this, I'm going to get myself in hot water no matter what I say. So,
yeah, it's definitely a path you can't go down without aggravating somebody somehow. So
yeah. But then again, that is the relationship. That is the thing, one of those sad truths when it comes to any sort of opinion, stating any sort of opinion on the internet.
Well,
yeah.
But like you said, we can certainly talk about the how they portray the relationship later on, I guess. I'm sorry, maybe I got ahead of things a little bit.
No, it's all right. But this is the world they live in, and apparently it's a place where puppets always, were a thing. And only recently did humans and puppets started showing up on a TV show together, which was called, like, what was it called? Like Happytime?
Happytime Gang.
The Happytime Gang, yes. And so we have our main character, Phil Phillips, whose brother was part of a series of murders, and all of which are connected back to the Happytime Gang TV show. And Phil Phillips was an ex-cop. He was the first puppet on the force until one bad mistake led him to be forced to leave the force. Leave the LAPD. So now he wants to get revenge for his brother and for the rest of his friends, associated friends from the TV show, and that involves him having to team up with his old partner, played by
Melissa McCarthy, and both of them try to get to the bottom of things. And so through their investigations, you kind of sort of learn more about the world, I guess, but not really. It's because every sort of interaction they come across is just one excuse after another to tell a sex joke or a drug joke or any sort of, or a violent joke. So it's just like a series of crude humor, and there's some interesting character stuff along the way, especially with Phil Phillips. Right.
But I would have to say this film, despite its ambitious premise, doesn't really do a whole lot of innovation with it. It just kind of uses a new format to tell jokes we've seen before. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I thought, unfortunately, the humor was not what I was hoping it would be for this movie. In fact, I feel like more than half the jokes were based around the fact that Melissa McCarthy looks like a dude, which is like,
Oh, yeah, maybe that really got old.
Yeah, it's funny like once, but then it's like, yeah, we know she looks like a dude. How many times do we have to go over this same old stuff? And then, like you had indicated, the rest of the jokes were along the same type of path. So I was hoping that it'd be more humorous, because one thing I always thought with the Muppets is that their humor was always pretty clever. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping for that with like a little bit more freedom, where like they don't have to be quite as subtle as they were. Not so much like on the recent one, but like on their old like 70s, 80s show, where they had like humor, but it was subtle and a little bit more highbrow and intelligent, where that wasn't the case here. They didn't have to be as subtle, but they just, their jokes weren't as funny, quite honestly. Like you said, they were just like cheap shots at drug use, sex, or fat chicks.
Right. And you know what? There a lot. It's not to say that these jokes are bad in any ways. It's just that they're played out, in my opinion. And I guess that's my own subjective That's my own subjective experience when it comes to my own personal taste in humor. For some of these jokes, they actually worked fairly well for me. In some cases, I actually did put a smile on my face, but I wasn't like busting a gut. I was never really busting a gut during my viewing of this film. And I feel like that for people who do enjoy the crass humor a lot, then maybe they would get more, how would I say, more bang for their buck for this film.
And I can enjoy crass humor. I just need it to be varied a little bit, which I don't think this movie did.
Right. Because the worst thing you can do is repeat a joke. Like, you can have a running gag, but I feel like there just needs to be, like, variations on the running gag.
Exactly. Like, you know, it's funny in South Park, no matter how many times they kill Kenny, because they switch it up, you know, but these jokes in this movie, like, I don't know how many of them, again, were about Melissa McCarthy just being unattractive, which you can only hit it so many times. You know what I mean?
And the same, that kind of applies to the whole, like, jokes about, it's like they're doing a whole parody where it's like, the puppets are like this universe's black people in terms of how they are oppressed by the police and by society and other people.
Right.
It's like they want to take stuff from real life and just apply it in an exaggerated fashion to the puppets. But it's like, again, these are jokes that we've probably seen with anything else. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what they kind of try to do with that one Netflix movie, Bright, where like the orcs are like the black people of this society, and people are racist towards orcs in that same over-the-top Hollywood-style racism. Although I would say this probably makes more sense, because one of the things people criticize about Bright was that how can you have orcs represent black culture when black people are also a thing in this universe?
You're right, which is a little weird.
Yeah, here it's like they try to make the puppets, despite there being so many different species of puppets, you know, different animals or different humanoid characters, they're still treated as like their own thing. They have their own... Oh, that's the thing, and now that I think about it, they don't really have their own culture or anything like that. They're just people with silly voices and silly appearances.
Yeah, they kind of play a little bit up. Like, there's a scene when we first meet Phil Phillips, and there's like a puppet juggling in the street. And he's like, you know, listen, man, we don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore. And the guy's kind of like,
it makes you think that, our puppets, were they always entertainers? But we never get anything to build on that idea.
Right, exactly. Like, I think it would have been really more interesting to delve into that more throughout the story, but they really don't.
Like, imagine if it was sort of like a thing where it's like back in the days where, you know, black people would perform at certain clubs that they were not allowed to attend themselves, and they were usually like the band singing or performing the music. And that's something that's alluded in Roger Rabbit with the Black Crows from Dumbo. Whether that was intentional or not, I'm pretty sure that was intentional. But it's like, so were these like, is this a sort of world where puppets are always meant to be performers? Or it's like they're only respected as performers, but not respected as actual people? But then again, that's probably, I'm putting in like way more thought than the writers ever did.
Yeah, you sure as hell are.
Yeah, probably people saying I'm overthinking this too much by trying to make sense of this world. But when they try to apply a very heavy topic like racism, it kind of makes your mind tends to wander a bit, I think. At least with Roger Rabbit and how it handled like toon racism, I thought it handled things in a far more subtle way, where with these toons, people enjoy the presence of toons for the most part, save for Eddie Valiant, just nobody takes them seriously.
Exactly right. Where in this movie, in the Happytime Murders, like, people would just have a lot of vitriol towards the puppets, it seems like. Like, we rarely even see a character who's like even somewhat sympathetic towards them openly in front of other humans.
Yeah, funny enough, we do have like Phil Phillips' brother, who I like that idea where he makes himself look human. Like, he wears a different nose, he bleached his hair, his skin to make it look more humanoid, like human fleshed colored. And he himself has a human girlfriend. We have a Phil Phillips who had an ex-human girlfriend.
Right.
Let's see. We have the Phil Phillips' interactions with some of the more sympathetic cops in the series or in the movie. Let's see. But yeah, we don't really get so many human puppet in relationships that aren't just I'm an asshole racist and I'm gonna do my one asshole racist joke.
Right, exactly. The only other thing that it is kind of like hinted upon is that people will have sex with puppets, but it's not really like something they want known out in the public, it seems, in this universe, which is, also kind of like, I don't know if we need to sort of take it super far that way, as far as they did, I feel like, but that's certainly going on in this film, right? I mean, so.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. And as for the idea that this is supposed to be a murder mystery, I thought it was handled decently enough for the most part. I mean, it's sort of a story we've seen many times before where it's like the murders get more and more complicated, and the person who tries to solve these murders, he just so happens to be in the wrong place in the wrong time, to the point where he himself gets accused of being the one behind these murders. It's one of those things where it's one of those plot lines that has been done before, but I feel like that can be good if you have, something else to spice things up, which I suppose in the minds of the filmmakers was the crass humor and the fact that this is all about puppets. So I thought the murder mystery went along well enough, as well as it could be. And the overall arc between Melissa McCarthy's character and Phil Phillips, like rekindling their friendship and learning to regain their trust in each other, I thought was handled surprisingly well. I thought this was probably I actually enjoyed Melissa McCarthy's character and her friendship with Phil Phillips, and they actually brought a decent amount of heart to the movie.
I totally agree. I've as I was talking to people about it, I said I felt like the humor really let me down as far as what I was hoping for. Yeah. But the story and the two lead characters were slightly better than I thought they would be going in terms of their story. Like you said, I thought Phil Phillips was pretty good as a noir detective in a story. The way he was presented. What did you think?
Oh yeah, I definitely love that character, and he's got the right amount of that grittiness. He's got the right amount of sympathy to his backstory. He's got this cold demeanor, but he still has a soft spot for those closest to him. He's definitely he wants to be a hero through and through, and you can see that shine through his depressive state at the beginning of the movie. Right. He just wants to do the right thing, regardless of what happens to him personally. And it's great seeing that classic trope of the down on his luck private eye returning to his former glory, which is another thing we we saw in Eddie Valiant.
Yes, yeah. In fact, he reminded me a lot of Eddie Valiant in his journey throughout this story.
Right. It's really funny. It's like this in this movie, you essentially have Eddie Valiant, who is in the role of Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. That's actually a very good way to put it. Now that you mention it, yeah, that's kind of what this is like. I mean, Phil's not as goofy as a tune would be like a Roger Rabbit. He's more serious, but he's filling the same type of role where he's looked at as a second-class citizen that Roger played in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right. And I guess Melissa McCarthy's character is, I guess, supposed to be the more exaggerated of the duo, where she's the more hot-headed one. She's the one prone to making mistakes, especially when she herself gets high off of, I'm not sure if it's glitter or sugar or something.
Sugar,
yeah. Because sugar is supposed to be the puppet's cocaine in this universe. And Melissa McCarthy's character, for whatever reason, has a working, what is it? A working puppet kidney?
She has a puppet kidney, which it ties into sort of Phil's origin story and his fall from grace in the first part, right?
Right. Yeah, where it's there was. Well, I guess I don't want to really spoil it because we're already giving away so much of the movie. Okay. I feel like we should give some of the twists. We should keep that spoiler free for people interested in the film, because we know that not a lot of people went to see this movie. It ended up bombing really hard, which is sad given that this movie took 10 years to make, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything else I wanted to bring? Oh yeah, well, I mentioned Melissa McCarthy was the more exaggerated of the duo, and I do want to say I'm very glad that she didn't go into her what I call her very improvisational style of comedy that we see her in a lot of her more recent films, especially with something like Ghostbusters 2016.
Right.
I feel like she was able to reserve herself enough for there to be a proper interaction, proper amount of chemistry with these puppets. And I guess that's the thing. When you're dealing with puppets, everything has to be far more scripted, because you can't have Melissa McCarthy make a random joke out of nowhere, because then the puppeteer has to say, oh wait, how am I supposed to manipulate my puppet into a way that can properly react to that joke?
Right.
Yeah, so this sort of format, thankfully, limits her from performing her rather annoying style of improvisational comedy. And that's not just her, but it's just, I've seen that trend a few times before, and I'm not that big of a fan of it.
Right, but because I think the nature of this movie did bring out the best of her, if you will, because she had to kind of stick more to the script, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, like, it was the same thing as that I saw in a movie like Spy, which was Melissa McCarthy in a spy thriller, and she was working with other actors who I don't think were comedians, so she again had to stay closer to a script.
Right.
Let's see. Anything else before we talk about like the actual puppeteering itself?
I don't think so.
I guess there's Joel McHale, and I like Joel McHale because I grew up watching The Soup. But his character isn't given a whole enough to do other than to be the asshole FBI guy who's constantly at odds with the police.
Right.
Which is a thing we've seen before.
Yeah. And this does, like, hit a lot of well-known kind of tropes from different films.
True.
As it goes forward. So
I mean, there's also like the femme fatale, and she's another thing that's a well-known trope of the film noir genre. So despite the fact that this movie has a lot of tropes of the film noir genre, it doesn't feel like a film noir flick at all. I feel like stylistically this thing feels very flat, very generic, very unimaginative in terms of its presentation.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we've talked about in previous films with like shadows,
lighting,
lights, camera angles,
cinematography, music, mood, probably some other things, but like none of those elements are really on display here. Everything just feels very cheap. Like to quote, use a criticism that was used on doubletoasted.com. This feels like it kind of looks like a slightly higher end TV movie.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good description of this film. Where I feel like it could have been a lot better in terms of its noir aspects, and that's one reason I really did want to see this when it came out, is to see if they could do that with puppets. Now, I'm sure that some things like camera angles are limited with puppets because you can't capture the puppeteer, but I still feel like you said, with the music, the shading, stuff like that, they could have done a little bit more to give it more of a noir feel. Like I think we'll have to keep doing this, comparing it to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where you do get some of those different camera angles and stuff like that, and shadings and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just very sad that there's such a lack of stylization here, where they could have really used it, given that how exaggerated this world is supposed to be. Right.
And I feel like I couldn't find a specific skit, but that on the Muppet Show they did like a couple noir skits that looked a lot better or more noirish than this did. Does that sound familiar to you as well?
Yeah, I probably might have catched one or two, because it's like, it felt like any program between like maybe the 70s to the 2000s, everyone had to do an obligatory noir parody at some point or another.
Right.
So yeah, that was one of my disappointing things, where it's like it has like the overall template of a noir film, but it doesn't have the look or feel of a noir film.
Exactly. It's like a puppet of a noir film almost, if you will.
Right. So I guess the last thing is to actually talk about said puppetry, and I would say this is like one of the most impressive aspects of the movie itself, especially given how they have made such great leaps in technology in terms of being able to portray puppets on a green screen and integrate them into a real background to give it the appearance that a puppet is moving on its own with no visible puppeteer.
No, they did that really well. The puppets, they look like they're actually in this world as you're watching it. It came off really well. At the end of the film, they do show some of the scenes of like the puppeteers filming it, and like the crazy angles these people have to climb into to get them to shoot that way is amazing. So I give a lot of credit to those guys for sure.
Yeah, and it kind of shows how far we've come since the days of like those direct-to-video Sesame Street movies, where like whenever a puppet character would be walking around on set, it's clear that this character was green screened in, and that their legs look really, really awkward as they're like moving around. Their legs look more like sticks, like stilts. Right. As they're walking around. Here it's like these characters have a more, it might sound weird, but these characters have very natural looking walk cycles and actions that they perform, actions and feats that they perform.
Right, like if you watch any of the older 70s, 80s Muppets movies, that's why they mainly shoot the Muppets from the waist up. Because they don't want to show their legs.
Or when the only time you see their legs are when they're like sitting on a stool or something.
Right.
Yeah, just to be at eye level with the guests that they're interacting with. Which ironically, or funny enough, we actually do get a scene like that when Phil Phillips is at the the porno shop. He's actually sitting on a counter talking face to face with these humans, and a nice little recreation of that concept art scene.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I kind of like that because it is a nod to old puppet type movies or the concept art too, like you said. So
yeah, let's see. Anything else to talk about this movie?
Before we start talking about the plot itself, what do you think of the femme fatale character? Just, wondering your thoughts.
I thought she was okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have her there for sex gags, especially one that was spoiled in the trailer itself.
Right.
And, what they do with that character is very fitting for the genre that they want to satirize. And anything else, I'm not sure. It's like she does her part well enough, but it's nothing that's going to leave a lasting impact on me. I will say she is no Jessica Rabbit.
No, I agree. That's what I was thinking.
Although that's probably not fair.
Right. I mean, come on now. Who is, right? But we all grew up in love with Jessica Rabbit.
Right. Those of us with a certain sexual preference.
That's right. Hey, I bet Shoma's got our back on this one. I don't know, but I have to check in with him.
I bet you, it's somewhere, at this very moment while we're recording, he's like, my perverted senses are tingling.
Yes.
I sense a disturbance in the force.
He's jumping online right now, I feel like I should look up Jessica Rabbit for some reason.
I feel the need to draw boobies.
Yeah. But don't worry, he won't make her dangerous. He'll just draw her that way. So, yeah.
I understood that reference.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you did.
So, let's see. You mentioned before you wanted to talk about the plot. So what was it that you wanted to bring up?
Did you just want to go over the plot for people, or do you think they'll be spoiling it for them, or should we give a spoiler countdown, or how do you want to do it?
I'm not really sure, because it's on one hand, I don't really feel the need. I don't think giving away any spoilers would be that crucial. I mean, there's nothing really from the spoilers that I want to talk about, because I feel like there's nothing there really to talk about.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
It's like there's nothing about this movie that makes me say, "Oh my god, remember when that part happened?"
Right. And in fact, it's even hard to remember the sequence in which things happened. The porn shop thing I know was early on, and then the other stuff happens later.
There's a part with a joke about incest couples. There's the part where like it's like I didn't do it.
Right, there's like Phil's flirty with the secretary. His secretary, like you get that a lot.
She was a decent, a nice enough character.
Yeah, Bubbles was her name, I think. Right,
probably. Let's see. There's the There's the part where with Melissa McCarthy is like taking out a whole bunch of puppet gangsters after getting ridiculously high on sugar. There's a recurring gag about her rubbing sugar in her mouth like cocaine.
There was maybe a little bit. The relationship was pretty good between Phil and Melissa McCarthy's character, where they had like a falling out, but you still get like when Melissa McCarthy's like kind of passed out in a stupor from having too many candy bars, she goes and cleans up her house. Those things were kind of good, I felt like, but again, nothing really super stuck out for me.
Yeah.
So, the femme fatale was okay, but not great. The twists were okay, but not great.
Yeah, it's just overall like adequate enough to be a decent time waster, and I think maybe now would be a good time to start wrapping things up.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was somewhat of a disappointment given how much of a fan I am of both the Muppet, of Jim Henson's work, and film noir stories. I feel like this could have been like a much more interesting movie if it had like perhaps a more varied style of humor, and perhaps it had a point to talk about when it came to the subject of racism. Instead, it's just treated as just a bag, kind of like a grab bag of certain cliched jokes that you've seen in other avenues, where it's not this, like, in terms of its premise, it's like, yes, it is interesting to see puppets do things in a way that we've never seen puppets do before. The walking, the running, the cursing, the fighting, the shooting, the drug using, the sexing, the zip and the zop and the zippity bop.
Don't go there.
No. Maybe that's too much sexing.
Yeah, it's too soon.
No, now I'm in trouble now, you see. I did things I did not deserve to be put in jail. So, what was I going to say? Where was I? Oh, yeah, so it doesn't do a whole lot other than, its technical achievements. The performances that are good are pretty good. So I would say this is, if this humor is up your alley, then you'll probably enjoy it once and then probably never revisit it again. I'm stuck between giving it a 2 or a 3, but given how limited this humor is, I would probably give it a 2 because I know this is not going to be for everybody. So I want to say like this is going to be for a limited audience, which is what for me a 2 out of 5 is. It's got some really good points. And for anyone who is into raunchy humor, you would probably enjoy this more. But I would say you're better off with Meet the Feebles, because at least, like, sure, they do raunchy, but they go places that you still haven't seen to this day.
Right. And they're more varied, too.
More varied, yes. There's a lot more variation with its jokes, its humor, its raunchiness. They go places that, no film today would ever want to go to.
No.
One character gets, like, AIDS, and throughout the whole movie, he is dying in a horrible, painful death.
Yeah.
There's a guy with, like, PTSD from Vietnam.
We might have to review that movie at some point. Just separate. We're going to do separate, like, puppet movie reviews now, right? Aside from kaiju and noir.
Yeah, we're gonna put a whole new portion on your website for puppet reviews.
There we go, puppet. We got to come up with a cool name for that, like Puppet View or something like that. I don't know. That sounds creepy. Puppet View.
Maybe that's the sequel to Let My Puppets Come.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Maybe like the Muppet Memoirs. This has a nice ring to it, right? The Muppet Memoirs. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. But we gotta have like a Muppet version of Draco Zool and a Muppet version of Atomic Rex.
I would actually pay to have those. That would be really cool. I feel like to have a Muppet version of Draco and Atomic Rex.
This like you got like Atomic Rex. This is the Matt Dinian show. Yay!
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
And then of course we've got to have guests on like Puppet Dorgon, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Puppet Steel Samurai.
Puppet Steel Samurai. Gosh, who am I forgetting?
Your overall thoughts for the Happytime
mine are exactly on par with you this time. Where I was thinking between a 2 and a 3. Highlights where I did like the Phil Phillips character. I thought he was pretty good.
I wish I can actually. Sorry to interrupt you. I actually wish we could see like Phil Phillips in more stuff.
No, I totally agree. I feel like Phil Phillips would have been cool. Maybe like in a TV show like on HBO or something like that, where he could be like a little bit more, and we could go more in depth into his character.
Yeah, you can have it just be better. Like a parody of like old 70s cop shows, like what was it? I'm forgetting. It's on the tip of my tongue of police shows.
Like a Dragnet or something, or
maybe you could do Dragnet. Let's see. I think it was like not NYPD Blue. What was it?
Heat of the Night?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm thinking Hill Street Blues. That's what it is.
Hill Street Blues. Okay.
Hill Street Blues. Heck, you can even go down the route of Police Squad if you'd like.
Right. I feel like he would have been cool, and we'll touch on this in a future review maybe. Mm-hmm. But in like a buddy comedy thing with like a Kermit the Frog, where Kermit's like more of the laid back or down to earth guy, and Phil's like the more hard ass. Like I could see that working out well as like a TV show. Do you think something along those lines?
Yeah, I can see that. But given how deathly afraid the Jim Henson Company was, or Sesame Street was, with its association with this movie, I'm sure they would never let something like that happen.
Yeah, in fact, we didn't mention that there was a parents tried to sue, tried to have Sesame Street sue this movie because of their they had puppets in it, and some parents were like, I don't know, under the impression that it was a kid's film when it clearly says like it's rated R. Wasn't the tagline something like "No Sesame, all street"?
Yeah. It's like, didn't you see the tagline of the movie?
Yeah, I guess not. There's some stupid people out there. But who
would let their daughters go see a movie that they would go that they had no business watching in? Who I certainly not using that specific gender as an example for a certain someone in this room.
Oh yes, yeah. My kids did not see this movie.
Okay, that's good.
No, they've seen some other. Yeah, allegedly, they've seen some other things like. I have no problem taking them to see a monster movie, but they did not see this film. Although they have seen Roger Rabbit. I bring them up right.
They can see a radioactive dinosaur burn hundreds of humans to a crisp, but you'd be damned if you start seeing a puppet sex scene.
Damn right. That's taking a little too far. Huh?
Yeah. You see, giant dinosaurs, that's unrealistic as hell, but sex, especially with puppets, that's too real, man.
Yeah, too real. Because there's probably people out there, right? I mean, I don't even really want to go down that road.
You're afraid of someone pulling a Pee Wee Herman in that movie theater.
Yes. Yeah. It's
not even Pee Wee Herman. It's the actor. What's his name? Paul. Someone pulling a Paul Rubens in that movie theater.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some dude there with his own puppet. Like, wait, why? Why does he have a Miss Piggy there? What's going on down there?
Why is he laughing so much? Ah! I don't like the sound of this. Yeah. Why did I choose to sit behind him? Or sit in front of him?
Yeah, behind would. I mean, they're both bad.
You're better off sitting behind him.
Yeah, better off behind him. Why is this floor so sticky? Nobody had a soda. But yeah, I want to go 2 out of 3 for this one. There were some points. Like I said, I did like the Phil Phillips character, but like you said, the humor was it was just repetitive. I don't mind raunchy humor, and like it can be funny. Like you said, Meet the Feebles is great, but the humor is just too repetitive in this. They kept hitting the same jokes, the same type of jokes over and over and over again. They just beat it down. The story itself was okay, but like you said, nothing really stood out. There was no scenes where it was like, oh, this happened or that happened, or it was even difficult to remember like the sequence of events that led up to the end of it. So I think it's worth checking out at least once if you're a fan of Muppets, or I mean, I don't really know if I can see if you're a fan of a noir film to check this one out. What do you think?
Probably not. I mean, this barely even feels like a noir film. That it feels more like just a buddy cop movie.
Right, yeah.
A buddy comedy. No, is this more of a buddy comedy movie under the guise of a buddy cop movie?
I think that's probably a better description of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, this has been like an unfortunate situation from a film that had a lot of potential, but hey, that's how Hollywood works. So many ideas get fed into the system only to be brought out, only for the finished product to sort of, lose quite a few of its glimmers of potential along the way.
Right. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andres. They had 10 years to do this. It doesn't seem like, as I'm looking at the Wikipedia here, that they made too many huge changes to the story as they went through, right?
Yeah, maybe we have to get to the bottom of this, Matt. Maybe it's possible that the one behind all of this was Brian Henson himself.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you and I will do like a buddy cop movie, or we track down Brian Henson to see what the hell happened here.
Yeah, it's like, were you the one with this repetitive, raunchy humor?
Who's going to be our femme fatale in this story, though?
That's a good question, because you and I, we don't know that many women. We're sad, lonely nerds.
Yes, that's true.
Well, you're married, but I doubt your wife would want to be a part of this.
No, she would want nothing to do with this, in fact.
Like, honey, would you? No!
Yeah. In fact, I only got to go see this because it was on my birthday that it came out. So that's how I twisted her arm.
like she looked at you, it's like, really, Matt?
Yeah.
Really?
Fine, that's what you get for your birthday and nothing else. And I mean nothing else after having seen that movie. So that's probably a good spot to end it, right?
Right. So where can people find you, Matt?
You can find me on Facebook predominantly now. So please follow me as Matt Danian is my friend page, but I talk all my stuff there. Matthew Danian is my writer's page. Yeah. And please, of course, follow both myself and Andres on the Kaiju versus Cancer Facebook page. I just put out a book that we're doing. All the proceeds for Raptor Tales go to Kaiju versus Cancer. I don't know that I've been on since that happened. And we hope to have some new stuff coming out soon. Andres and I are working diligently on a couple projects and hopefully a new shirt soon. So, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, even if we don't have a shirt on sale, that doesn't mean that Kaiju versus Cancer is over. It just means that we're just taking our time, giving you a rather kick-ass product for you to want to donate your money towards. Right, absolutely. Yeah. So, of course, you can follow me here on the Kaiju Noir channel. You can also follow me on Toku Legion on Facebook. You can also, I would highly implore you to follow the Primal Warrior Draco Azul Facebook page, where you can get all the latest updates on my upcoming giant robot indie comic. We're about past the 75% completion mark in terms of the coloring. All we have left, once the colors are done, are the lettering and the cover art by, hopefully, James Biggie. And let's see, anything else? Oh yeah, be sure to check out Planet G if you want to purchase a giant monster comic book that I took apart in editing, which is Nagorayar Kingdom of the Monsters, which is distributed by K Productions, a toy company in Thailand. And be sure to also follow the creator of that comics work, Garayan. You can follow him on Facebook or by his Facebook page, Planet G. So,
Andres, before I forget, real quick, I owe you a very special thank you. I mentioned briefly the Raptor Tales book for Kaiju vs. Cancer. You edited that, so thank you so much for doing that as well.
Right, so I have worked on 2 products which have now been published and are are available to purchase online. That is Nagorayar Kingdom of the Monsters Volume 1 and was it Raptor Tales of Monsters and Heroes?
Yes. And all proceeds go to help out kids with cancer for that one. So please take a look at it.
Absolutely. So, I have been Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir.
I've been Matthew Denian.
And until next time, everybody, take care.